This is the Dirty Dozen, the top 12 sacrifices that most of us are going to feel when it comes time to retire. And probably the biggest sacrifice is our loss of identity. For 20, 30, maybe 40 years, we've been able to answer a question that's very common in the United States is, what do you do for a living? So not only that, the answer to that at a party, but also as we think about ourselves, who are we without our jobs? So that can be a tough one, but you know what? It's not insurmountable. A simple answer to the party question, what do you do for a living? I'm retired now and I enjoy doing this. You just transition into something else. So with all of these sacrifices, there's a solution to it, but I want you to be aware of it. Probably the second toughest challenge that people have is they're sacrificing putting additional money into their savings account. When we're working, we're putting money into the savings account. And again, for many of us, since we put that first penny in our piggy bank, we've been saving and saving and saving for retirement or saving for a down payment on a house. We've been saving, and very seldom do we take money out of that savings unless it's for something like the purchase of a house. But it feels different when you're taking that money out to fund your living expenses. So that's the second thing that we sacrifice, is just that feeling like we're adding to the savings. We're better off tomorrow because of what we did today. And now it's time to actually benefit from that. But it can feel like a sacrifice initially. Next one that we're giving up is we are giving up the right to let somebody else fill our to-do list. When we have a job, work is a 4-letter word, right? W-O-R-K. And somebody else, for most of us, unless you own your own company, somebody else is at least putting some items on our to-do list for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year. And when we retire, we sacrifice that. And there's some good with that, but there's also some bad that comes with that. There's a comfort of knowing, okay, I check off this, this month, this year, I check off this list of 10 things and I'm a good human being, right? I get accolades from doing that. And when we retire, it's no longer somebody else setting up that to-do list. We have to do it for ourselves. Now, personally, I like that, and I think a lot of people like that, but it is a sacrifice, and it is something that we're giving up. What else are we giving up? We're giving up busyness and just this sense of urgency. There's 24 hours in a day, there's 168 hours in a week. That can be a lot of time. And that's one of the things that I initially counsel with my clients on is, how are you going to use all this time? Because when we're working, the reality is we sleep 1/3 of our time. We're at work 1/3 of our time, right? So that leaves us 8 hours. And for some of us, the commute is at least an hour of that, right? That leaves us 7 hours, and we got to get ready for work, get ready for bed. So, we're down to maybe 5 hours a day. And these hours have a way of compounding on one another, in that, going from 5 to 6 hours kind of feels like a relief. You can slow the flow, right? And that's a good thing. But when you've got 168 hours a week that you have to fill, initially it's going to be normal to struggle with that. Tends to be 4 phases to retirement that we all have to go through. And I've alluded to several of these aspects, but the 4 phases are, at first it feels like a vacation. We're glad to have all that free time. We're glad that there's 168 hours in a day, and none of it is spoken for. So the first phase is vacation, and make that last as long as you can. It tends to last 3 months to 2 years. And if you can make it last 2 years, you want to just relax on a beach, and you want to decompress from 40 years of the pressure, working, meeting budgets, meeting goals, people problems, management problems, saving money for our kids' college expenses, paying off our mortgage, all of those things, saving up for retirement. So the first phase is vacation, where you debrief. And the next phase we've kind of talked about, which is kind of this feeling of loss, right? You've given up some things, which is what today's video's on. And then after that comes this period of iteration, where you're trying to redefine yourself. And finally something hits. For some people, they're lucky and the very first thing that they try works. Maybe they want to get involved in their not-for-profit, or there's a group that they want to lead, or They want to do coaching of one of the high school athletic teams. Whatever it is, they find that thing. So it's the iterative process. Some people will find that right away, and for others of us, we're going to go through Habitat for Humanity. We're going to work with our church. We're going to do a number of things until we finally found the new us. And once you're there, and most people look back and say, I wish I had done this transition sooner. So those are the phases, and you're going to see that many of the sacrifices in today's video build off of that. So let's keep going. We talked about 168 hours a week. We lose somebody else kind of fill it, not just our to-do list, but also our calendar. The next thing that you lose, because you have it in spades, you lose the need for solidarity time. That you have so much control over your time that for many people, they get all the solo time that they need. Not for everybody, but certainly the majority of people, and I would say the vast majority of people. You have plenty of solidarity time, so you no longer feel the need to sneak away for 90 minutes and go to the library, just decompress and read a book and listen to some music and just relax, right? You can do that as much as you want when you're retired. So we lose the need for that solidarity time. The next thing is, and this is more of a negative, all of these you can take as a negative or a positive, but number 6 is we lose our flexibility to overspend. We're at the mall, we weren't planning on buying anything, we're going in there just to go out and eat, grab something to eat, or maybe hang out with a friend and get in some steps inside because it's cold and windy outside. But you see something in one of the shop windows and you're like, wow, that looks good. I'd like to have that. And when you're working and you have money coming in, you have a lot more flexibility to do that. In retirement, most of us are going to be living on a tighter budget. This is an important aside. For those of us that haven't met, if you're watching this video for the first time, one of my videos, I'm Azul. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years. The thing about the flexibility on spending, in any one month, could you spend $500, $1,000 more than you were planning? Let's say your budget's $5,000 a month, and 1 month you spend $6,000, and it's not a regular recurring thing, it's probably not going to move the needle for you. I should say nothing that I'm sharing here is financial advice. This is just to put things on your radar screen. But I can tell you, if you run somebody's financial plan and they say that they want to spend $6,000 a month, let's say the numbers don't work, and so I rerun it and I do various scenarios. I say, at $5,000 a month, the numbers do work. You have a very high likelihood of meeting all of your financial goals. And they say, great, let's do that. Well, remember, I ran the scenario first, hypothetically, with $6,000 a month. So if they leave and say, hey, Azul said we're fine, right? But then they go spend $6,000 a month every month. Well, they're putting themselves in a precarious situation. Their plan may work, their plan may not work. You don't have as much flexibility to overspend on a regular basis. You do on an occasional basis, but the secret is keeping it occasional. Number 7, you give up some of your risk tolerance. This is really a key point. A lot of people, this is a big surprise for them, and that is how they feel about risk is going to change when their nest egg is all the money that they have in the world. They still have Social Security coming in, but Social Security alone is going to be a pretty meager lifestyle for most people. Right? I mean, it's going to put a roof over your head and it's going to put food on the table, but not much more than that. So we don't want to plan on that. And so when the market goes through corrections, which is what the stock market does if you're invested at all, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have years, I don't know, but I would not at all be surprised to see years sometime over the next 30 years, to see at least 1 year with a negative 20% return and negative 30% return. To put it in context, in 2008 and 2009, the S&P 500 from top to bottom was down almost 60%, 57%. So, if you had a 50-50 portfolio and you had $1 million, that meant that $500,000 was invested in the stock market. Even though you're a balanced portfolio, you still have $500,000 exposed. And a 50% correction, that's $250,000. That's going to keep a lot of people awake at night. It's going to keep most of us awake at night. The question is, how acute is that pain? Does that pain go from discomfort to anxiety? And that's where people put themselves in a situation where, unfortunately, because of the mental stress, their mind, because they just can't sleep, they just want the mental pain to go away, they can become forced sellers in a down market, which is why it's so important that you get your asset allocation right. What percent of your portfolio is in stocks? What percent's in bonds? And while when most of us retire, hopefully, if we're in good health, if you retire at 60, you've hopefully got close to a 30-year time horizon in front of you. And even though you have that much time, I do want to remind you at 60, unfortunately, most of us are going to have fewer than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of us. So you want to take advantage of that. But getting back to this, the fact that at 60 you have a life expectancy of 20 plus years. I think for women it's 84 or 85 once you reach 60, and for men it's a year or two less than that. So you still have a long time horizon, but what you no longer have, what you've sacrificed, is your risk tolerance, your ability to withstand, the emotional ability to withstand the ups and downs, because you don't have more money coming in. And people think, oh, well, in the past I've never blown out of the stock market, I've never sold because the pain of the loss was so great. I know intellectually that the markets always come back, that as long as American companies continue to do things better, faster, cheaper, eventually the stock prices are going to catch up to that. But even though you know that intellectually, in your heart, and emotionally, it can be a hard thing. It's a very hard thing for anybody to watch that kind of a correction. So another thing, as I mentioned, that you give up is your risk tolerance. Number 8. What else do you give up? I'm not a big fan of budgeting, but I think that's one of the things many of us give up when we retire. Is for most of us, unless we've got a huge buffer in our portfolio, we have a lot more money than we're ever going to need, which isn't many of us. There probably are some people watching, and kudos to you. You have done it. You've won, and congratulations. You can skip forward to the next one. But for the rest of us, we're probably going to have to budget, because again, there is a big difference between spending $5,000 a month and $6,000 a month in retirement in perpetuity. Again, do it once or twice, not a big deal. Do it every month, it could be a big deal. You want to check with your financial advisor and say, hey, it looks like we're spending $6,000 instead of $5,000. So one of the things we give up is freedom from budgeting. I tend to be a high-level guy. I don't like to budget. And so the way my wife and I do it is, as long as we're saving X dollars a month, then, the dollars kind of go where the dollars go. And sometimes Azul spends a little more money. Sometimes my wife spends a little more money. Sometimes we don't buy things that we thought we were going to buy. Sometimes we do buy things that we didn't know that we were going to buy. But it all kind of works out in the end, as long as we're saving the right amount of money. But it becomes tighter when you're retired. Again, getting together with a financial advisor to run those numbers. And one of the things I suggest actually is, before you retire, this is really key, is before you retire, I want you to think about test driving your retirement spending. Let's say right now you're spending $8,000 a month, a little over $8,000. Let's say you're spending $100,000 a year. So $8,300 and some dollars a month, $100,000 a year. And you say, well, in retirement, I'm not going to have to buy certain things, work related and things like that. We can probably cut that back to $6,500, right? And I just took 80% of that number, which tends to be a benchmark. I don't think it's a great way to do it. What I'm suggesting is what I think is a great way to do it. And so you think, okay, $6,500, we can live on that. Well, maybe you can. Maybe you can't. So I want you to think about actually test driving that and living off of that budget for 100 days if you can. Better a year. So if you're in your late 40s and you think you want to retire at 55, try living on that budget. See what that feels like. Now, you can't replicate it exactly, right? Your home is your home. Maybe you're saying, okay, well, we're going to downsize when we retire, so we won't be in this house. So we still have this mortgage. But as far as the going out to eat, as far as going on fancy vacations, as far as all those Amazon boxes that get delivered to our homes every day, things like that, you can test drive that and see what it's like, and see if that's a comfortable lifestyle. And it's really critical, because if it's not a comfortable lifestyle, then you want to think about, okay, retirement, particularly early retirement, which is what I work with people on. Is I'm not saying everybody should retire early, but I do think everybody should be thoughtful and deliberate if they have the ability to retire at 50 50 or 52 or 55 or 58, whatever the age is, I want them to be thoughtful and deliberate about whether they retire or not. And the reason for that is what I call our ambulance moment, right? Right now, hopefully most of you are relatively healthy, and when we hear an ambulance siren, we pull over and we let the ambulance go by. It's a courtesy because somebody needs medical attention, and we want to support that. But you know what? Someday, instead of being in the car that pulls over, we're going to be in the back of that ambulance, and we're not going to know if we're going to survive this moment. Maybe we've had a heart attack or a stroke, or we got in a car accident and we're not sure that we're going to survive. And we're thinking this could be it. And you're probably going to be thinking about relationships and people that you love and care about. But you're also going to think about, did you get your time? Did you get to do the things that you wanted to do? And so if that moment, well, it's going to come for all of us at some point, right? Or unless we die in our sleep, when that moment comes, I want you to be able to look back and say, I was thoughtful and deliberate about whether I retired. So we talked about budgeting. Number 9, this one tends to be pretty painful. And that is, unfortunately, we're probably going to lose some of our friends at work. And maybe even really good friends, people that we feel very close to. But when we're at work, we have a common mission. We have a common goal. We have a common terminology that we use. We may have a common enemy, somebody, maybe a customer that's really difficult to deal with, a competitor, or maybe somebody at work that's difficult to be around, right? So we have all of these things that bring community and help bring us together as friends. But when we retire, when we disconnect from that, we lose all those points of commonality. And so even with the best of intentions, it's super easy for people to drift apart. So unfortunately, that is number 9, our friends at work. And related to that, I talked about goals. Our goals at work, it feels good to accomplish a goal. It feels good to win. And if you've got a good boss, if you've got a good team, hopefully the team is pouring accolades on you and saying, good job, that was awesome, way to go. And that just feels good. And we can still get that, but we're going to get it from other places. Like I said, maybe you volunteer someplace and you get it there, whatever your activity is, hopefully you get those accolades. One of my activities is this YouTube channel. And thank you all for the comments that you leave. That is the currency for me. That's what keeps me fueled and energized to do these videos. Okay, so number 11 and 12, and we're gonna circle the airport and bring this plane in for a landing here. Number 11 and 12 are related. Number 11 is you're gonna sacrifice that knot in your stomach that sometimes you get when you're like, ugh, I've got a tough week at work in front of me. So you're going to lose that. And then you're also going to lose that Monday morning commute. So those are the things that we sacrifice. I don't want you to sacrifice too much between now and the time that you retire, which is why I made this video up here, which are 7 things that I want you to think about stop doing in your 50s. So that you can enjoy the journey until the day you get to retire and make some of these sacrifices we talked about today. Thanks for watching today's video. Bye-bye.